Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. And we will open the meeting of the Fall River Planning Board Tuesday, September 24th. It's now 5:30 and I'll have a roll call.
Charles Moniz.
Bethany Andre.
Beth Andre.
Charles Moniz, Cynthia Savigny. Mario is absent today. We have Bill Roth here, our city planning director, and Brittany, and
Alex Mello with Fall River Government TV.
And we have item number 1. The definitive subdivision on file number 19-209, the location of 386 Kilburn Street and Dwelly Street, lot B17-1. This continued from the September 5th meeting.
That's all you need to write.
Yep.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Dan Aguirre. I'm a senior project manager at SciTech Engineering with addresses here in the city, as well as Dartmouth and Marshfield. As you may recall, 2 weeks ago, we were before you with the initial presentation with regards to this 14-lot subdivision that's located at the King Philip Mill property. It's a portion of that area, as we had discussed. We had a very productive meeting at that planning board meeting, and at that meeting, we requested that the board continue the hearing till tonight's meeting to allow us to meet with different department heads, get their reviews in, make whatever modifications to the plan that they needed, get that back into the city for another review before we came back here. Basically trying to come back here with a clean bill of health from the department heads. And I have to state that the planning staff made it a point to get this all facilitated within this 2-week period of time, which is pretty quick. As far as getting the meeting scheduled, getting all the parties involved that needed to be there, getting the review letters out, getting me what needed to be changed, back in, reviewed again, and then a final letter that I did receive a memo last night that basically details where we're at, what we've done, and has some recommended conditions and some other items. What we really left off with the board was there were several, if you remember, waivers that still needed for the board to act on prior to approving or endorsing the approval of the subdivision itself. So we should probably go through those quickly. If you remember, we removed one with regards to pavement width. We had initially asked for a 22-foot wide pavement width. We removed that, and we revised the plans to incorporate a 26-foot pavement width, which is what's required in the bylaw. So that was one less waiver than what we needed to have you act on. So a couple of the others, again, the first one being the required cost estimate. And as we said before, this is kind of difficult to do at this point because we don't have an approved plan to put a cost on. So for me to come up with a price of what it costs to develop this almost means nothing, because when we have a third-party reviewer that will come in and watch over all of this that as it gets constructed, they will tell us this is what it costs. So to believe mine might not be appropriate, where the one that you're hiring is probably the better number to look at. So that's a waiver that we routinely ask for. That would be the first one. The second one would, again, as with regards to a schedule of construction activities. Usually, once we have an approved set of plans and we hire a contractor, at that point, that contractor can put together how he would like to do the job. Normally, a meeting would take place between myself, that contractor, the owner, and representatives of the city, and we would come up with a schedule of construction activities prior to the start of construction. And we're not opposed to some type of a condition that would require that. An environmental impact evaluation, we discussed this again. A project like this, it's clear to see the environmental benefit of what's taking place out here with the removal of this mill, the contaminated materials, the hazards that exist, increasing green space, lawn, trees, and creating 4 new single-family homes. I don't think you need a lengthy document for me to prepare to have everybody understand the environmental benefit of a project like this. 25-foot radius, what that comes down to is, normally in a subdivision, when we intersect a road, something like this roadway layout, not the pavement itself, because that still has a radius, the actual roadway layout would also have a radius. But what that kind of does is it takes up space that's really not needed. And where we received the variance to create these lots to be as small as possible and to create a dense development, that would take away land area for these homeowners. So what we did during our meeting that we had with the department heads, we discussed creating easements that would serve the same legal purpose, so that it would allow the city to come in and fix any sidewalks, curbing, and still have plenty of room to do that, but it would be through an easement, and that change has been made to the plan. A width of a 50-foot right-of-way, that again, that's not the paved section of the road, that's the roadway layout that's associated with it. A subdivision of this size of only 14 lots, where it's not a road that connects through, we feel that 40 feet is more than sufficient, and it allows us to keep a smaller footprint. And then lastly, we had discussed this one at length, was regards to the underground utilities. And I think at the last meeting, the board seemed like they were in favor or amenable to granting that waiver. What I'll add is just a couple of quick of the larger changes that we made through the planning process and the review process with the different boards. Again, we widened this pavement to 26 feet throughout the subdivision. We've made some drainage improvements, putting in a stormwater quality manhole in this location, replacing a standard manhole. This drainage pipe, we've now embedded that in an infiltration trench to promote groundwater infiltration. That was one of the things that community utilities had asked. We widened the easements to be as wide as they needed them to be, 20 feet rather than the 15 that we had initially proposed. Some water gate locations. So there were a lot of dotting of I's and crossing of T's that the different agencies asked us to take a look at. So we made all those changes, submitted that back, and then got another review back. I did review the last letter that I received from the planner last night. I have no opposition to any of the items with exception to one. There was a comment, and it wasn't addressed or discussed at the meeting. It probably should have been. They were asking that we install some catch basins up in this Kilburn Street location. They said the southerly entrance. What happens is now water runs in this direction from south to north along Kilburn Street, and there is a drainage system within that. So the city engineer had concerns that this water that runs in this curb may enter our subdivision. So he had wanted us to put some drains up in this location here. Normally, when we come off of an existing street like that, even though our roads are going downhill, what we'll do is, here's the existing road, we'll maintain that gutter line so water continues along the edge of that curb, and just with a little bit of a bump through the sidewalk walking area, and then we'll continue to go down. So I don't think it's a condition that we really need to contend with. However, I do know that community utilities did put that in as a request. If we had to add some catch basins or a catch basin in those locations, I would propose that we tie them into the Kilburn Street drainage system, because that's where that water goes now. But with lack of time to be able to resolve this, that item is still kind of floating out there. I think it's an item that we can deal with Department of Community Utilities. We would ask that you don't make it a condition of approval, technically, but I think you'll have a commitment from the developer that will make sure that the Department of Community Utilities is happy with the drainage situation there. We really can't take stormwater from Kilburn Street and run it into our subdivision, into Cook Pond, because that water doesn't go there now. But we would have no problem with keeping it in Kilburn Street and tying it into the drainage system on Kilburn Street itself. So I'm not really sure, maybe the planner can give some advice of how to handle that one proposed condition that they put in.
That's
Other than that,
6.
we don't have an issue.
You want a number? It's number 6.
Is it number 6? They carried over from one page to the other, so, okay. Yeah, so it would only be item number 6 that we would have an issue with. Everything else we've already discussed. Trees were shown on our cross-section already at that same planting schedule. The lights on the utility poles, not a problem. So no, I think we're good. Do you have any questions regarding the waivers that we're requesting or anything else in the subdivision?
Just like, don't we have catch basins right in that area on?
There are, right, but what happens is, so they're at the intersections of the roads. So right now, this water would normally run along our frontage and then enter into this intersection. So there are drains there. What they're afraid of is that this water will come here and come in. But we'll make sure that this gutter line, so that this water continues to flow in
Isn't
the
that
street.
driveway kind of high anyway?
Well, it is,
Yeah.
yes, but we're cutting in a new road through there. But we'll make sure that it comes up and down,
Pinch it, yeah.
so the water stays in the gutter and doesn't come into our subdivision. It's for a curb opening, it should be upstairs.
After this?
Yeah.
After this meeting?
You have a hearing after this?
No. Well, what's that?
For Bayview.
It's upstairs for a curb opening, right? You want to make your driveway wider?
City Council.
City Council upstairs.
Yeah.
I read that one on the agenda,
First floor.
and I only guessed with the name. So that's all. So, yeah, so we always, just like in every subdivision, we keep the water that's in the street, and we only have to deal with what's in our subdivision, that's all.
Any further questions from the
I
board?
don't have no questions.
Well, you have my report from September 23rd that's addressed to the planning board, and I did email it to Dan yesterday when I got it done. So we've reviewed everything. The applicant has addressed everything. Should you find that they meet the, where I'm recommending that it does meet the facts findings, present that it does meet the board, should you grant the waivers, then the recommended conditions are on the memo 1 through 18. Number 6, which Mr. Aguirre brought up, that was requested by Community Utilities. The city engineer has taken a look and reviewed it and said that the gutter line does appear to run that water down Kilburn. However, Community Utilities does want to be on the record that they have concerns with that, and that it may need to be remediated during construction of some sort. So if you wanted to, it is the ability of the board, if you want to, if you make a recommendation to approve it, deleting proposed condition number 6, that's fine. Community Utilities wants to be on record. I know that this is the first subdivision that some of you have done. It's the first one that I've done. I'm pretty methodical. I'm sure Dan hasn't seen one with this many conditions.
It's not his first, it's his first one here.
It's my first one here. I've been doing this 26 years. It's my first one here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of conditions, but it's more of, the conditions are more, and I'm sure Dan doesn't object to them because it's a pathway to construction.
Correct.
A lot of the conditions are in the code, but I am just stating them that this needs to be done, this needs to be done, and a lot of them are all within the code. The ones, this will require conservation.
Correct.
So I have put down that prior to endorsement that they need to get their conservation, and then obviously it's condition 10 and 11. If anything changes, they have to come back and amend. And then, but a lot of them are just the pathway to construction that are outlined in the code, but I prefer to reiterate them in an organized set of conditions. So with that, I'm recommending, should you grant the waivers, then it would be, I would recommend these conditions, and then you can decide whether you wish to delete condition number 6, which deals with those catch basins. And I'm available for any questions.
So we would have to say delete, when we accept this, and if we want to delete that.
If you wanted to, you could say, you could say motion to approve, subject to the 18 conditions identified in the September 23rd memo by William Roth deleting condition 6, if that's what you wanted to do.
18 conditions, right?
Right. Because when I write the decision, I will just write, if you do delete it, it deletes it, and I'll still have 18 conditions, but condition number 6 will be deleted. I don't renumber anything.
I'll make a motion that we accept the definitive subdivision plan with 18 conditions and delete condition 6.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. So when is the next conservation hearing, do you know? I don't want to file until we were done here. Do you know what it is?
So the deadline's tomorrow.
Relapse. You know what's going on, we shouldn't have said that.
Oh, I guess Dan will be busy tomorrow,
It was
tonight,
today.
right?
It was today, right?
Yeah. You'll make the November one.
The 9th of,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It'll be a beautiful
Good luck to
subdivision.
you.
Thank you
Yes.
so
the
much.
deadline for October is.
It's the last thing.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
no problem. So you'll make
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
the deadline for next month is tomorrow.
Hey, I forgot to.
So we'll see you in November.
What's that? He didn't say thank you? Bobby, you didn't say thank you to Beth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He did, he just
I
didn't shake my
apologize.
hand, but he did say thank
I
you.
apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
You're very welcome.
Nice, Dan.
Yes, it is.
Take it easy,
Thanks.
Dan.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take it easy, Dan. Sorry, I just thought you didn't say hey, thank you to.
Thank you. And we have item number 1. This is application for endorsement of plan believed not to require approval Form A plans. And the first one, item A, is file number 19-1445, owner applicant Ryan Brooks at 37 Day Street, assessors lot G20-55.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The property, they're proposing 2 lots, with Lot 1 to have the existing single-family house on it. It's in an R4 district. The minimum frontage is 75 feet, and the minimum area is 6,000 square feet. Lot 1 has 75 feet along Day Street, and 5,000, that's not right. It's minimum area for an R4, has 5,660 square feet, and the minimum frontage for Lot 2, that has frontage on Osborne and Day Street, and a variance was issued by the Board of Appeals on July 3rd, and is recorded in Bristol County Registry of Deeds, so it meets the requirements for endorsement, so I would recommend endorsement.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, and item number 1B is file number 19-1446. The owner applicant is Daniel Quintal, location 33 to 35 Fall Street, and assesses lot B-13-7.
I always do that.
We should put some tape on those. You've seen several of these. I'm going to get on my soapbox on this one. These are one lot that has 2 existing structures that predate the subdivision control law. And if you look at note number 2, it says a division of lots does not constitute a subdivision under the general law 41, section 81L. Division of tract of land on which 2 or more buildings were standing when subdivision control law went into effect in the city or town in which the land lies separate each lot to 1 building remains shall not be constitute a subdivision. So this, while certain applicants come, they go get a variance prior to this to make everything fully conforming. Technically under the law, The applicant is allowed, this is not considered a subdivision, so you can sign the plans. I wish to officially go on record saying that lots 1 and 2 will be non-conforming, and that if in the future they wish to do any type of building improvements, they will need to go get variances. It's a really quirk in the law that allows you to sign this plan and allows a non-conforming. There is a note that says there's no determination as to compliance with applicable zoning laws intended or implied with this endorsement. I require that to be on there. So therefore, under the law and under section Master General Law, Chapter 41, 81L, I recommend that you can sign this, and I only wish that the applicant went and got the variances and then came and did this. But some choose to do it and some choose not to, and they just sell that problem to somebody in the future. Unfortunately, the board doesn't have the authority to deny this, so I'm recommending approval. But I do go on my soapbox on this one.
Any questions? No? And do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that Form A plan, file number 191446, Daniel Quintel of 33 and 35 Hall Street, accept the plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item number 2 is the approval of the September 5th, 2019 minutes of the meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one has signed for public input. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.